All right. Here we are for day two of the hour of power. 1 hour only today. Actually, more like 55 minutes. And again, this is just part of my personal resolutions to, be available because time is relative. You always feel like you don't have any time, don't have enough time. You have too much time on your hands. It varies for everybody. So let me get my mic position here properly. It feels obstructive. And yeah, actually, the one of the things that I was saying is the reason why I wanted to get on these calls is, or not so much as calls, but these connections, is because I have to get a little bit more familiar with once again being on this microphone, and that's just because of a lot of the explosive things that are going to be happening this year. So I'm like, hey man, you better get to it already. I need to see you today again. And when you have lots to do, you always got a lot to do, right? When you're busy. And so if you're like, okay, well, this is an hour. So out of all of those, let's say 16 hours, I just need this one for this because it's so important. And so that's why I'm here. I feel like it's very important to keep interacting with everyone, to get more clear and more fluid. Like, I guess yesterday was my first day back in retrospect to this continuous thing. And just getting more fluid in relation to the questions, so that way, you can really see, how it all connects, see the vastness, but also get that in a dosage of time that, it's not like a 5-hour dissertation. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and allow this, chat to be open now for anyone that wants to ask any questions. Um, I definitely see some familiar faces, and actually, it's interesting in my life because I have a lot of people that I'm connected to on different levels, and on the physical, it's like you only have. Let's say I'm a type of person that I want to put my all in everything. I can't even say I try. I want to, and that's what I intend to do. And when you look at the limitation of the human body and the limitation of just how much you can do by yourself, though, that's what starts messing with you. So you start learning that the only way to get massive things done, as I always said, if the ideas can be put into creation as fast as they can be thought by the collective or by the person, if you're dealing with a genius, then you would know that you've caught up, or society has caught up to its true potential. So what I'm looking definitely to get into very deep this year is really to, wow, just explode in not only the diversity that is presenting itself, but also to implode still more so in the awareness of, oh yeah, but we've seen this already. We already know what to do. It's just becoming more and more relevant and more important, meaning that the connection with nature, sovereignty, having your own thing, kind of getting detached from financial systems altogether, and getting the real relief that you need in your relationship, trying to repair a lot of the healing that you've had going on in all your relationships. This is whether it's a lover, friends, you name it. And just really getting that time back. But also, we want time because we don't want to miss things. And it's like, even as watching my daughter grow up, and I do, as much as I can to play with her, but she wants to spend obviously 24/7 with me. That's any kid, right? They're going to want to spend that time at least with whoever they could get that connection with. And in the old times, obviously, how things were set up, it was like all the kids and all the tribe were together. So they had other kids to play with. They had great, they had other mothers that were their aunties. They had great grandmother, also. And the grandmothers seeing like themselves as the young person again. And so they had all of this going on, and that created a lot of structure for the human being. It developed an entirely different kind of human being, a human being that was more tapped into who they are on an organic level, because that's what they spent their time doing. But obviously we had to make another leap. There's always that drive to go further and to explore further. And in that leap, that's where we find ourselves now. We've made a gigantic leap. As far as some people would think that leap was backwards, but we've made a leap nonetheless in opening up things more and seeing what is the potential of being a human being, what is the potential of being here on earth, what could happen if we try certain things. So we're now at that point, and I can for sure say, like, I think this is like going to be also sometimes the year of the grumpy old men. I just noticed a lot of grumpy old men popping up into the conscious arena with the doomsday. Oh, that'll never work. It's never going to happen. You're all going to die. And it's like, man, it's been 40, 50 years, with those same old stories. When are we going to change the story? And not so much as that, but when are we going to change the actions? I was seeing that, being just real and being ready to connect and say, okay, this is how we grow something. This is how we create something without dissension in there. Somebody whispering behind, oh, this person, this blah, blah, blah. And then you see like every opportunity that has been given, someone, that same characteristic, that same character that's kind of like within, let's say, what we need to fix about ourselves. It pervades anything sometimes the community gets involved in or the collective gets involved in, because it's like, but that problem hasn't been fixed. So it's like if you're still backbiting, if you still think of scarcity, like one thing that I always feel like is personally, when you're creating something, when you're pioneering something, you need to focus on doing that, get that done, move on to the next thing, and keep building and keep powering through. Because if you start going back and, now everybody's taking it apart and they're like, well, you said that wrong there. And, that you created, there's a better version of that now. So if you try to run back to that and say, oh, okay, well, let me build that over again. And you got to understand, dealing with what's behind you and what's in the past and what is calling you back will have an effect on you remaining present and you also pioneering the future. So you have to get your own weights and measures of these kind of things. I feel like the amount of time that I get with myself to go back is right before bed. I start to think about when I was younger, and I start to think about like just odd stuff like being in the classroom with certain teachers or being on the playground I try to grab anything. I try to see how much I can really still, and then I always have these aha moments like, oh yeah, because if you think about it, like mainly anybody who's listening to this conversation is probably over 18. So 18 years of memories at least. And obviously some most in the 30s, somewhere in there. So you could crawl over it. There's so many moments, right? Like imagine you pushed record from the time your life began, and then you look at that file now and see how big that file size and see how big it is, right? So it's impossible. It's not something that, can be captured in some device, but within the mind and within the consciousness is there. And so also this leads us to realizing that but there's some other stuff there though. There's other things like the deja vu, or when you catch feelings, when you smell something or you see somebody and they remind you of something, or it's just that moment. And I have a lot more of that personally these days more than ever. Like I know that something is happening where whatever separates things is becoming thinner and thinner and thinner, and that separation is dissolving. And what we're really coming into is a gradual feeling of this awareness and this gradual feeling of this connection. So give me just a quick second. Let me check the chat box here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up because I just want to give some wholeness today. We got about 45 more minutes, and I'm going to open this up for questions. And yesterday was a very strong full moon for me. I felt like, yee! I mean, you could just see how everything here works on these energetic cycles that are within us. And, it makes a good map for when it's time to do specific things. When it's time to plant, when it's time to reap, when it's time to focus on something, when it's time to just get away from all of that. So, in real time, like for me today was very important in relation to security. And it's just because the space that we're going into right now, and I do see a question here, so I'll get to that. The space, I hope I can pin these questions. Let me see that. There we go. The space that we're going into now, because it has a lot to do with this digital era, you have to really be cautious and on point just on point. Forget cautious. Cautious is like, ooh, be on point. Just be on point about your information, okay? And this is everything. Like, you have personal information that you're maybe putting onto the web, or you have in your cell phone, stuff that you don't even actually open up to the internet, right? And you have to imagine a day, because that day is already here, but it's just going on in the background. It's not something public yet. But you have to imagine a day where all your data, everything that you've done, everything you've browsed, everything that you've seen, everything that you've typed, that there's a possibility that that data may not only be available to everyone, but also just in the first rollout available to, let's say, companies that you may be applying to, people who you may be trying to get a job with or working for. Case in point on why you need to become sovereign, right? Especially for some of y'all with y'all internet history. So, but you have to realize that with big data and all of that stuff, that all it is just a huge file on everything that you've ever done or that you ever looked at to try to get an idea of who you truly are. And in the event that that information was just published to everyone, you could see how that would be Judgment Day. Like if AI, like one of the anonymous AI bots start publishing all of the stuff that obviously Hillary Clinton and all these people have done in all those anonymous documentations, right? So it's coming out that it was actually an AI that was publishing that information for multiple sequences to take place after that. But you can imagine, just people's data floating out there and just going out there because it's held into somebody else's hands. So this is the time that sovereignty also means security, right? Because part of sovereignty is becoming your own bank, and then part of sovereignty is actually becoming your own army, your own force, your own security. However you design that, right? So also, it's a big realization also in this crypto space, because the crypto space was already very tainted with hackers and people who generally traffic the internet doing craziness with a ransom. They call them ransomware, where some virus comes on your computer, holds all your important data. They demand some cryptos to get that data back. And then most of the time you never recover it. So all of that kind of stuff going on is the counterbalance, and it's better to look at it like that, the counterbalance to having these new tools available to us in this world that in many tenses starts becoming the bridge or the gateway to detachment, right? Because one of the things that we're going to be teaching over in the ambassador training is not just the whole aspects of working with, let's say, cryptocurrencies, but also the mindset of dealing with something that's moving up and down, which helps you in your relationships and other energetic things. But then also not to play the digital game either. Like we still have to realize, like, a bag of digital coins would be worth still virtually nothing if it never, literally virtually nothing, if it never came back into the physical reality and was used to construct the plan. And if there is no plan in place, then there can never be any success. There could only be greed. You see, like that's the truth of the mechanics of the mind of a person who aggressively starts building energy. So building energy could not only just be building wealth, building energy also is on a spiritual level, right? Building energy is also, let's say, on the level of popularity. Let's say more people start, coming to you or liking you or whatever, anything where the numbers start to increase. The biggest caution is actually for the person to realize that they haven't necessarily hit success because the numbers are increasing or because they're making more money. They reach the success and they reach the fulfillment when the distribution and the throughput of how that's coming in starts to make a complete turn, right? So I'm looking forward to 2018, as a lot of people actually have become already virtually millionaires overnight or are holding portfolios that, why they may be worth a few thousand now, are worth millions of dollars here in a few months. It's happening overnight. So because of that, we have to imagine that we still have a scenario where the outlets to where people are supposed to put this kind of energy, right? Let's say, for instance, in the world, what is most people thinking about when they, let's say, gain a large amount of income? Lambos. Oh, let me go get a Lambo. They're not thinking about preserving the species. Like, that's not what you hear coming out of their mouth. Oh, great, I have enough cash now. I can actually preserve this entire area's turtles. You see what I mean? So this is the mindsets that you're going to see as it becomes all-pervading. And what all-pervading is like I said, the get down or lay down. It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. The faction, the group, whatever, has enough ability, enough resources to make it happen. And then other people just say, yeah, that's actually what I want to do. I'm over there. So basically it trends. So I always talk about that, the day when, the holistic way of life, which is just being real, starts to trend heavily again, and that people realize the greatest value is within themselves, and that they may just be a little bit late. We can catch you up though, but they may be just a little bit late in the process of mummification, which is basically your life here, preparing yourself in this cocoon to get ready to fly after this. And that getting your wherewithal in this time, which is challenging, like it is very challenging to, if you're like the rat pushing the pleasure button, right? Because everything is offered to us. It's like got all of these, different kind of websites, all these heat sensors, all these, let's say, games, all these movies, all of these, different ashrams and gurus and different techniques. And it's just like, no matter what it is, it still makes it into a category of quite a bit. And when you're looking to see, hey, how am I going to integrate with all this that's being offered to me? Because that's how the world should really look to everyone now, is that, well, actually you have a lot being offered. Now you have to come to the realization of what's going to be most imperative for you to take. Like, what's first? What is the cornerstone of what's going to get you to the next level? Because trying to identify the next level, trying to contact people from the next level, trying to do things related to that will only produce disappointment, as the foundation to how those things are to get built is missing, right? So what we talk about is first getting a good bearing on your uniqueness, because it doesn't mean necessarily that you'll be able to work or let's say, for instance, serve yourself in the capacity of your uniqueness, work in a field that actually inspires you and is something that you want to do. It doesn't mean that you'll be able to do that right off, but it's important to know exactly what that is, because when you're putting your plan together and when you're focused on your plan, all the other things that you're doing that are a part of putting that plan together, because they involve so many small pieces themselves. If you don't know what the plan is, it becomes very difficult to continue to focus on the plan. So the question here is can you talk about how the blockchain and the black goo and human DNA are related? Most definitely. Just to give it to you in a nutshell, as defining those first as they are, is for those who haven't heard about the black goo, which is not to be associated with gray goo. I think actually the people that were coming out and trying to talk about black goo, which I think was predominantly cats, the negative black goo that he was talking about, let's say the black goo that had the nefarious or evil intentions, that et cetera, as he explained it, that is gray goo. And gray goo was created through the process of nanotechnology and the inevitability of creating a self-replicating nanoswarm. Since the whole idea of nanotechnology is basically micromechanics and replications, basically creating micro machines that can repeat the same, can carry out commands on a microscopic scale, then it was like inevitable that a gray goo, which is a self-replicating goo, could be a concern in how to stop something like that, and the implications of it. And the implications are more like Spider-Man touching the venom and then, starting to end up becoming that, because it's replicating inside of their system and replicating in their consciousness so much. Okay, so that's gray goo. Now, what black goo is black goo is akin to, if you could get to the bottom of the ocean and just take a cup of what's down there, that would be black goo. And that would be like the strongest version. One of the versions that you could, let's say, get to now is known as mountain tears, aka She Legit, which gives 85. It has 85 ionic minerals, or 85 minerals inside of it, in an ionic form with fulvic acid, which also breaks down those minerals. We also, of course, provide She Legit. But it's been known that She Legit substance is basically the closest that you're going to get to black goo, beyond, let's say, the ultra spiritual, if you may, connection with Ma'at, which of course is the principles of Kim, the principles of the black or the mystery, that which still in most cases remains hidden, which is basically how do things start their first process of forming. And they just, that's just known as Ma. So that's the beginning of the black goo. And I have a very strong inclination that element is very aquatic and has a lot to do with Earth's waters before there was what we would call land. and most of the organisms being, if not all, being in fact products of things that have come from the ocean. And even the art of chem or alchemy would be to blend that raw squid-like matter of intelligence into, and that would complete your question, a genetic string. Like, so basically the process of, let's say what I'm showing in the radiolaria is you have shells that are literally shaped like what you would feel like your heart was in. Like, let's say, for instance, your heart was just all by itself, okay? And let's say it's just a part, right? It lives on its own. It could live on its own, okay? Let me let you understand how powerful these ancestors were. So the heart as you know it would live in a shell, or what you would call a shell, by itself. Now, these shells are shaped specific ways. All the ventricles and all the things are built. So you see that now. Most people just see that as something they want to eat. Something they crack the shell, you know, that's all they really understand about it at this point. But before, there was awareness that this is, okay, this could be the heart, this could be the colon, this could be the spleen. And alchemy was the ability to blend all of that together to create something from it. And that's why there's a high connection with these aquatic, like the Dogon tail, the mermaid, etc. Highly aquatic entities being a very strong part of the preliminary session of what we would say is humanoid, or in that case, more of like an amphibian 1.5, okay? So the important thing, though, to realize is, and you can go look at it there, it's only a scroll a little bit down, you'll see the things there. All of what we're seeing here is geometry, which also exists within our body, tones, vibrations, frequencies. All of what we're seeing is coming directly from the ocean first, but you could see more of its primordial phase. So now how blockchain connects to that is, blockchain is basically a direct replication of different kind of systems. Let's say, for instance, the blockchain system, as they said, is the Byzantine system of confirming transactions. So it's basically a system that attempts to understand something, confirm it, and then move on to the next stage. That's basically also how DNA moves, is it has to confirm something, it then saves it, then it moves on to the next phase. Now, any more deeper connections that blockchain has, seeing that it is still a digital component, is a, you know, there's other things, but I guess that's just relative to your question in relation to blockchain and DNA and how that sequence is connected. So the next thing here is, how do you balance getting things done in the physical realm without burning yourself out? It is indeed the balance itself. It's the balls that the jester sometimes is just throwing up there, because it all seems so silly when you really think about it. So that's why I'm saying there's two different beings here. You're talking to the physical body that lives in a matrix versus the spirit or the soul, whatever name you want to give it today, and the multiple layers that don't have beginning and ends, don't have the same geometric limitations of the entity known as the human and how we exist. But that doesn't mean that you just go and sit down all day and wait for your life to be over, right? You want to interact with this reality, and you want to make things happen to the best level of your cognizance of what you should be doing. So that puts you into this process of figuring out how, I see what pinning is for now. It brings you to this process of figuring out exactly how to manage both, because obviously the reason why the physical reality is going to be very silly to a spiritual person or a person who's tapped into themselves is because at the end of the day, you can't let it get to you, meaning that you can't jump right into this and feel like it's real so much that it starts to affect your spirit, because you've already learned in your spirit that that is the highest state that you are existing in, and it's unmovable. It's not able to be affected. So if you then go down the ladder and then start playing this game that you're really being affected, that you're really having a hard time, that you're really mad about things, that people do that haven't reached the higher stage of consciousness. But once you've reached the higher stage of consciousness, doing that continuously would be very damaging. So what happens is you start to make some amends with yourself. You have to sit down at one point and say, okay, so what is it that you're trying to do anyway? What do you want to do anyway? What equals fulfillment for you, not success. Success is just, I got it right now. It's working for me. I made it happen. Okay, what do I do next? That's success. Fulfillment is like when you don't really have the wherewithal to keep moving around or to keep interacting and those kind of things, the day will come that you don't feel like, oh man, I missed out on my life, that I'm still trying to get to this certain level, that I can't believe I wasted my life. You don't feel any of that. You feel, hey, I'm ready to move on. And in many cases, you may know where you're going if you adapt to a lot of this much more expanded knowledge that's coming out about what we really are and how we really connect to ourselves beyond just these physical bodies. So to answer the question, what I do is, I can't say that every single day I just come in here and it's perfect for me. I have definitely been driving really hard in a certain level where it's almost unbelievable, meaning that if I just turn the cameras on, let a person see how many different things I do every single day, like different things that are not even related, but I have to be in there doing that. It will seem almost like maybe somewhat disheartening, like, hey, if I have to do all that, then I'm not interested. But what I did, because I didn't know all that stuff at first, many things I trained myself, is I started to say, well, still, anyway, your day is going to come. Meaning the day is going to come when you're going to expand beyond this or contract. And because of that, it means that it's almost like the Iron Man race. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you'll realize that the champion is a mindset. It's not so much as whether you won whatever race they set up, which many people started running before you even thought it was a race. It's about whether you feel like a champion and whether you feel like you're making headway. Now, of course, there's going to be uphills and downhills to your journey and your travel. Like everything about dealing with gravity puts some kind of strain on you, but the strain has been shown to strengthen a lot of the beings that have come across this realm. So what I do is that I try, first of all, to find the encouragement within myself, because I know that if I'm not self-motivated, then it's all going to fall apart anyway. Because if I'm depending on something or someone, my oversoul really wants to teach me to depend on myself. So what kind of lesson is it going to give me in this universe or university? It's probably going to give me some level of betrayal. It's going to give me some level of abandonment. It's going to give me some of those things so that way I can understand that, hey, there's still going to be that point when all this, let's say this field shuts down and the other one opens up. It doesn't mean that it's going to shut down also for everyone that was in that reality. And on top of that, it doesn't even matter. What's most important is it's shutting down for you, and now it must open back up again. And I think the biggest part of this, and I can only say think because this is my opinion, the biggest part of this is that when you want to live again, you want to experience. Notice how one of the biggest things happening here is that people feel like their physical reality stinks. And it's because it's so manipulated and all these different things that are happening. And I agree that there's a lot of buffoonery happening. But at the end of the day, let's say, for instance, if I leave with a mindset where somebody else spoiled it for me or something else spoiled it for me, that's either going to allow me to redo this entire thing over again, or it's going to allow me to somehow not get fulfilled. So at the end of the day, I find that those personal goals, like when you see, like I used to read these encyclopedias, and I noticed how there was like all these people that we never heard of, right, that have done things, right? And as I was reading this encyclopedia, like, you know, people that have created different things and stuff, I was like, man, I may not even be on the level where I really even created anything yet, let alone there's people who've created things that we still virtually forgot about. Here's the proof. So this means that the whole goal shouldn't be for people to remember you and the people to know all you, the people. The goal is for them to interact with you through what you create. So then you'll find that your best form of communication, for me, actually is not talking. It is actually building things. I have to keep talking because the crickets start going on with all the chat and the sites and all that if I don't come out and say something because I'm in the tool shed working. But the truth is that the main thing to me, like I talked about yesterday, is because everything is centered around communication. Having this multifaceted expression of ability to communicate beyond language allows you to not find yourself frustrated and pent up. So then that doesn't equal that, hey, I didn't really accomplish anything and I'm burning out. You start being able to look at everything and say, no, but on that arena, yeah, there's only that much done. But on these other arenas, there's so much done. Even in just how to look at this, and this is not directly related to cryptos, but let's say, for instance, one of the benefits of being your own bank is you did that. Like at the end of the day, even if the bank didn't work that well, even if you made some bad trades and, now you got to hold and just wait for it to recover, the truth is that you still stepped out there with the intention to become your own bank. That's the truth. Like now people who sit out there with the intention to make money, that's their intentions. That's the way they look at it. So notice how the way that you look at things always equates to the value of it. Like if I look at someone that I'm with as being the most important thing for me and being a vital part of who I am and what makes me me, then they're given a certain level of value in my economy, in my bank, right? And when you devalue them, of course, they have that much meaning to you. So this is why you really want to get yourself in control and say, am I working on things that are valuable to me? Is the changes that I'm making with others valuable to me? Not is it valuable to them? Like that's a given. That's obvious. If it becomes valuable to you and you're doing something that you feel has value within it, then it's going to go right to that person in that same way because that's called intentions, right? So when your intentions are in the proper place, it gives you a great deal of unsluggish strength to endure the numbing, because I'm not going to tell you, oh, it's easy. I just do it. No, it's numbing. Like some of this stuff and how it's designed and how it's put together was designed directly for robots. Like this was like thought about by people who were writing in a robotic language to talk to a robot and then putting something on it that would make it more easier for us to interact with is just now really happening. Like apps like Flux, right? That help your eyes, because at a certain time of the night, you're still looking at the screen sitting at, let's say 5,200 Kelvin. That's about daylight, right? So it's your eyes, which can't necessarily tell the difference between that and the sun shining, really. And now this process of the serotonin and melatonin and all the rest of the stuff that needs to happen and the healing that needs to take place, just like all the rest of the animals and things that are asleep that are generally awake in the daytime, doesn't happen because of staring at the computer screen, right? So things are invented like Flux that naturally control the shine, the glow of the screen or the intensity of the brightness during the day to completely taper off by the time it's night. And it kind of looks yellow, so that way you can get proper sleep. So again, the augmenting, which is going to be necessary for many people because you still got jobs. You're still working in different places. You're still doing things that are not exactly in line with your vision, but know your vision. Because once you know your vision and know your focus, it's easy to line things up to serving you. It's easy to not waste energy by knowing that if someone throws you off or treats you the wrong way or whatever, you immediately can say in your mind, see, that's why I'm becoming sovereign, because I don't have to deal with that anymore because I'm going to be removed from this entire situation. Let me just keep pushing out my plan, and keep living my plan until it's complete. So next question here. Exactly. Let me see. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. It doesn't allow me to scroll up everyone because I know there's some amazing questions up there because I saw them yesterday. And I was like, I didn't see any of those questions while we were during the chat, but I'm going to keep going through this. And, I guess the questions that are selected are the questions that are supposed to be talked about. We have about, looks like 20 more minutes. And let me see, we just got some witnesses in here. Okay. I have a question here from Renee asking about the Steam It platform. That's just how diverse it's getting these days. One day it's going to make sense, meaning that one day it's not going to feel like a complete cutoff from other things when we start talking about other topics. But the Steam It platform is obviously a platform that seeks to pay you based on your content. And the component to Steam It is D.Tube. And we actually have a site on D.Tube. It's actually Secret Energy there because I was kind of fascinated by the idea at first, especially when I saw some videos had actually made some decent cash from people just wanting to look at them. But what I did find is when using the platform, that from the video side of things, that it still was somewhat of a limited audience actually viewing that content. So I sought to explore it a little bit more and see if content related to cryptocurrency was posted and how that did, because I was predominantly posting content about spirituality, and we put like 10 videos. So beyond that, I believe the literary side of it with anything, like if you have a literary talent, even with Medium and even with so many of these different sources now, that if you're very strong, if you have very strong literary skills, posting, editing, those kind of different things, then there's like an open world out there of success for you. But Steemit is a decentralized platform that does push the content of other people who write original content and want to see more compensation for that content. And lastly, the Steemit coin actually mooned itself recently, just went really high up there. So it does have some value. The next question here. Okay, so the person also asked me, could they contact me to share more? And most certainly, the person that's Renee, for anyone who wants to know about Steemit, is actually saying that she did very well on it. And so, yeah, definitely contact me about that. And that's awesome that you're doing well with that platform. I think it's great. And, a lot of people just look at cryptocurrency for the trading part, right? Like just trading the stocks. And that's kind of like looking at every single company that you have to deal with every day, or every single product you have to buy, as the stock exchange. So it's not the correct perception, right? You don't generally see the stock exchange part of a company. You see when you walk in what's there available for the end user, right? The store you walk into, the items you buy. So there are many other things that the cryptocurrencies do beside the exchange. And even learning, again, future forward ways to actually do things are available in a lot of this white paper. So, I thought I was going to become a massive connoisseur of white paper. I just don't have the time to really go through all the stuff there. But one of the main things that I'm interested in is the Cardano platform, because of the gentleman who runs it. And I'm sure somebody can put his name in the chat. But when you listen to his videos, you're dealing with a lot more than the standard person who's just trying to get some money off of ICO. You're dealing with someone who has submitted the work, understands the science, understands the mathematical equations, has taken that to the proper sources to get it judged, has created other platforms, has enlisted universities to look into it. So Cardano is basically light years ahead of most cryptocurrencies, and that's just plain and simple. Will it do well? Can it dethrone Ethereum? That's not the time for me to really get into that. I just know if it anyway becomes a competitor, then it ain't going to be at the 70 cents that it is now. But for it to even come anywhere close to where even some of the legacy coins are, as far as per ADA price, just for those who are still calculating it that way, it will make Cardano basically a $1 trillion cryptocurrency. And in the event that that happens, then the final, or some of the final parts of the roadmap of Cardano would be fulfilled, which is basically to create an entire structure inside of their own cryptocurrency to eliminate. See, one of the things that I can also see now, what one of the biggest problems is? Passports and that whole border situation. Have you ever thought about that? Like, there are people literally locked in their country and can't go anywhere else. And their country is maybe not necessarily where they want to be at this moment because of some kind of instability, some lying, some thieving. And you're basically locked in a cage with liars and thieves. So up until this point, there's no island or city or place that you can go where everyone there is not about that, and they have the wherewithal to basically stop their place from being invaded, right? Because at the end of the day, you would think a lot of this is going to, in the end, come down to force, because you're going to have people that are extremely wealthy and are extremely intelligent and are extremely connected. And then that is going to have to go head to head with the more or less ignorant, old set of consciousness, crusty, brute force military industrial complexes all over the world and their desire to handle things that way. But think about, of course, how immature it is. Like, just from an overall scale, the production of our consciousness at that point, still have these kind of people hanging around that are still like kids in a sandbox trying to figure out how to throw sand in each other's eye and how to throw, basically shooting nuclear bombs and shit at clouds, or not doing it at all, creating it in a complete Hollywood studio to scare everybody all the time. That whole immature approach, it's like when you come into the complete awareness of yourself, you start really realizing why you're here to replace all of that. And how that comes about, always for me, has never been like, how can I conceive in my mind that that's even possible? And I think that's the biggest question, because some people will think that you're insane if you go on this kind of venture to actually think that you can change people, because they failed thus far. Now, we do change people all the time, one person all the time. But when you're talking one person at a time, when you're talking massive scales of change, I don't look necessarily first, and I never looked first to things like financial engines that could infinitely crank out cash. That's not where I went, because there's a system that is so deeply rooted within what we're dealing with. It's more of on a spiritual level, and I suggested that we should look there first. And so I always felt like the solutions for the bigger problems, the way to really, punch them or nudge them where it hurts, is to deal with it on a spiritual level. Like to really, really wax strong enough on a spiritual level to move principalities, which is what you can see really that's in the way of most people, to move principalities out of the way, so that way what needs to then reflect, which is only a shadow, the action of happening on earth to make it occur. So then, you scour for, especially if you really want to save your people. Imagine that you're the heroine or the villain, the heroine or the against the villain, or the hero against the villain, etc. for your tribe. Okay, like that's what the kids, they look up to you. It's like, Ubuntu, he's strong. Like, he's the one or she's the one that actually leads the way. They wrestle the tiger, all this kind of stuff, right? So imagine you're that kind of person for your tribe. And it's a real thing for you. This is not when you go back into the shed, you're like, I can't believe they think this much about me. No, it's because you really accomplished something. You really did something, right? So to hold to that same level, you have to be a person that has a vision of the future to say, what could become danger to my people that I need to prepare myself for dealing with now, so that I can always maintain what they believe that I am and who I am to them, and even what I believe in myself. And so you have to find the right tool for that. And for me, spirituality, like I said, it's the poor man's treasure. It's when you're finally realizing that there's no value in anything that you can't take after you die, then you go look for other treasures that extend beyond that point. And spirituality has always been that. And to me, it's like something that says, hey, whenever you're ready, you can come to me. You're going to end up coming to me anyway, but, go ahead, I guess take your time if you feel like you still have it. And so I understand now that our ancestors, which, again, check out the radiolaria. I try to give the hints to people. I don't try to tell them exactly what to do and what they should receive from it, because now I'm putting an English filter on it, which is going to taint it and distort it. But I'm saying it's kind of obvious that if everything came from the ocean, the only form of communication is really shapes. That the shapes that you're looking at is basically your ancestors. So if you wanted to learn a different language and how to still communicate with that level that's going on now, that level that's super connected, that level that's still in that, that system of power, then that's how you would learn the language, and it'll speak to you, right? So that's just a word to the wise about becoming spiritually stronger and keeping things around that resonate their ancestry. Now, the next question here is, and we got 12 more minutes. Person asked that, they've been traveling for about 2 years and they've ended up essentially in the same place and at 22. And they're asking, how should they spend their time? And they have so much time on their hands, and they're not really harnessing that time. And they can only spend so much time relating with the family and studying different things like cryptocurrencies and investings. And I don't know where to start it. I don't know what my plan is, okay? And the answer to that question is just what I said earlier. And Eddie is, already on it, because that's how we really do is, it's not just getting the answer for you in this conversation. It's about continuously, when you need that nudge to say, hey, but stick with that. Because when you're virtually in the same situation, if we looked at that just as a drawing, what has happened? It's mean that you've run into one direction to do something, didn't actually make it there completely before you completely changed your mind about it, and then ran back into another direction that was kind of like opposite to all that. And then you didn't actually make it to the completion of that before you ran back in another direction again. This has happened to me. It happens to many of us all the time when we're unsure, because what do we talk about? When you're on an island, let's say, for instance, everybody's on this island with you. You can't, let's say you can't see any other islands. Everyone on that island is like, there is no other islands. This is the only one. That's kind of like what people are doing on Earth about other life forms and species and aliens. There is no other intelligent life. We're the only ones, right? So you can see how intelligent it sounds, right? But it takes bravery to start playing with that field that may eventually getting you to answer for yourself when seeing is believing that there is really another island out there. Not just the belief, but the knowing, because you've gotten there, right? So what happens is you get people, they start preparing this, and this is all of us. We start preparing our vessel to make the trip. Others see us doing this. This is all of the dieting and all the different things that we start doing to get ready to make this journey to go to the next level. So some chime in, some join us, some quit. But ultimately, when it's time to make the next level of journey, the quantum leap, which sometimes is like the dark night of the souls or the ayahuasca journeys or whatever, when it's time to make that leap, of course, you only have a couple that will go with you, but most of them are like, man, y'all crazy. There's nothing out there. So then as you get on the boat, you start paddling, you'll realize that some of the people that took off with you, most of them will want to go back at a certain point. They'll start seeing the island disappear. And then because they've gone out a little bit further with you, they won't still see where they need to go yet. So they paranoid. They may cause a mutiny and leave you on a raft and take the boat back, okay? So now you're out there on a raft, and now you have to ask yourself, is land really out there? What I built, they've taken, and they've gone back with it. Now I've decreased my chance of even surviving. If I don't turn back now, I know I'm not going to make it. Am I going to keep going? And this is the turning point with all of us. We all have that same scenario running with different things to least to greater importance. I started learning how to spot that, and then realizing how to keep going. Because now it's so easy, it's almost like a program within itself. Every time I see everyone talking about it, when I see a nice chunk of people just all of a sudden leave me, just like, oh, he's doomed. Look what he's saying now, and they're gone. Now I know I'm headed in the right direction. They'll be back. Because they're the ones that jump off the ship right when it's supposed to do its thing, right? And I noticed even within, and I'm going to tell you something even deeper, and we got 8 more minutes here. I noticed even in, let's say, the trading of the cryptocurrency, because it's connected to real accounts. Those are not all the time robots. Those are real people holding wallets. The reason why you can use the Fibonacci sequence to track the movement of coins, like Brandon talks about, is because there's real people in there doing that. So that's their up and down swing. Like the market's up right now because it's full moon, duh. And the market is it's gonna have to correct itself. It may not be a massive correction. Don't go pull your money out. It's gonna hit the floor wherever the new floor is and keep coming. But if you think it's just gonna go parabolic, that's not healthy, right? But it's happening because there's a lot of energy. The yeast are building up, the bacteria, everything, the sexual side of things, all that's booming. People are making impulse buys. So that's how that whole chart and everything works. And when I started noticing that, especially when I was early on doing things that I instruct now people not to do because I had to go through the part in the process. But one of the things that I would do is look at a coin, or let's say you look at some energy, you look at an investment that you've put into place, especially around the first time that you've done it, and it seems like the moment that you got in, it started going down. Let's say, for instance, you started a business in a certain area you thought was going to be booming. You got in a relationship, the person didn't promise you the world. You thought it was going to be all great. And then the moment that you got in, no more than a little bit later, they're already showing signs that it's going to be the same thing that you feel like keeps plaguing you, which is the lack of success and why it seems to work for everybody else, but it doesn't work for you because you're impatient. That's actually what the charts really teach you, because first of all, if you didn't trade properly anyway, you're going to have to wait for this thing to rebound. But that patience is key to the success, because even the event that you just jumped in with all your weight and all your disbelief, you've kind of weighed it down just a little bit, right? And so you need to go through that process. But here's the other thing that I learned. There were other times where I saw myself making decisions that I was like, why did you do that? You already know that that's exactly what you don't do, but you seem to do it right then, and then that was like the wrong time. Then I started realizing, okay, so this is somewhat of the artificial intelligence aspect of the exchange. Let's just call it that. That it's just like the house in Vegas, right? You know how they say you can't beat the house. Nobody beats the house, they say. And so people win from time to time, but if they keep coming back, then they'll lose eventually. This is what they say. So what this is a product of is obviously the house has found mathematical calculations and used mostly that to determine how they're going to get a higher probability of losers versus winners so that they always stay up, okay? So in that, notice how if you used artificial intelligence just to determine certain numbers or certain points, they call it psychological barriers. They even talk about that in the market in energy, right? So let's relate that to relationships. What's a psychological barrier? It's when you get to a certain stage with a person that you've gotten with other people and you feel like that you're never going to get beyond that stage in that relationship. You're like, here it is again. They don't want to get married. Every time I get with somebody, they don't want to get married. Why can't I get married? Because it's a psychological barrier. Now, that happens on the chart. There's certain numbers. Like, for instance, right now, Bitcoin's psychological barrier is $19,500. And it's because there are a lot of people still stuck at $19,500 that have mortgaged their homes, and they're hoping and praying that Bitcoin returns there, and their sheer anxiety is depressing or pushing down the market. And that's, of course, giving more value to other things, right? So now look at that from a relationship level. When something is depressed, right, and it starts to become depressed, then more value comes along. It's like the person starts to see value in other things. So that's why I was saying any of these things that you could master, you would figure out everything. You just have to get to the point of that mastery. You have to get to the point where you say, okay, I'm not going to go like this anymore. Back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. Going back with them, back on the boat. Even though everybody is talking about you. Still, now you want to go back because you want to be a part of the norm again. You want people to accept you again. All of that, and that's a part of being 22, right? We're maturing a lot more faster, but also realize there are things that you will learn that will show you why you're the most important, why it's important for no matter what other people are doing to persevere on a certain path until you make completion and mastery. Hopefully you can do it within your uniqueness because you get a double bonus. But if you have to do it within whatever you're doing at your job or whatever it is, perfect it, master it. Find the masters of it, finish the game. And then what you'll see is in there the same components of how to finish all of the games. And then you can choose which one you want to engage in based on the one that's going to be the most rewarding. So the last thing here is, that's it today. We are at that 1 hour point, which I promised. There's about 3 more minutes left in. I'm just kind of scrolling through the comments like a wheel. Let me see. All right, there's a lot of statements here. Seems like everybody is wise and powerful. Like attracts like. So at this point, okay, so somebody is saying West gives Marduk Lucifer credit for everything, even thought. They are only 500,000 years old. West sins or misses the mark. Okay, I'm not sure exactly who they're referring to, but at a certain point, man, you just gotta delete these programs. Like you remember in the movie The Matrix when they talked about what was the Merovingian, and then the Oracle basically said that these are programs that they were told to retire, but they basically didn't retire. They wouldn't commit themselves to exile. And this is basically like old mindsets and things that had served a mode of explanation, just like Plato's cave. You're witnessing certain things go on. And because you don't have any other tools and components or the visual perspective or the science or the language or whatever to really assess what you're dealing with, but you still must make a choice or make a determination of what it is, you may describe it as something. But later on, if you figure out that it's not that, you can't be, well, they can do anything, but there's been many factions that have not been willing to recant that information. And I just find if you create a bunch of devils for yourself, don't be surprised if you live in hell. I'll say it again. If you create a bunch of devils for yourself, don't be surprised if you live in hell. Because this is what the hell in the mind starts to turn into when the person starts to connect with more of the evil, dark, negative side of the aspect of the reality versus keeping that stuff in harmony or at least realizing its purpose. So, wholeness and balanced vibrations. It's an amazing time. I'll be seeing you soon. Can't say it's tomorrow. Maybe it will be. It's only an hour. That hour of power. And I look to get integrated more and connect more with everyone. Those that are tuning in probably already know we got the ambassador training going on live and strong if you want to check that out. And we're continuously pioneering this, empowering through it. We will be linking again. So if you are going to catch us, definitely put some questions together for yourself. You can get those questions answered. And for those that I answered their questions today, thank you a lot for taking the time to share what you have on your heart. And I look forward to connecting with everyone soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next generation of science.
Is there any way in which one's mind can be